Thank you, Nick. Let's call to order the Town of Hanover Selectboard meeting for Monday, June 2nd, 2025. We have member Athanasios is participating via Zoom. He is back from the trip, not feeling well, may not be attending for long, but he will be here for the initial part of the meeting. Agenda review. Because of that factor, I am going to ask that we move the organizational meeting for the select board officers to the front end immediately after public comment. Any other items with respect to agenda review from select board members? Seeing none, let's move on to have no announcements or recognition today. Yeah, thanks, Rob. So we will move on to the public comment. This is the period of the agenda when the public is welcome to address the select board. We ask that one addresses issues not already scheduled on the agenda. We ask that individuals restrict their comments to 5 minutes. Questions will be directed to the chair. And the chair will decide whether to answer questions or take the comments under advisement. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board at this time? All right, I see Kari and Dave. The tag team, okay?
Yes.
Please introduce yourselves, although you need no introduction, but please do anyway.
Dave Chaffee from Etna.
And Kari Asmus from between Etna and Hanover Center.
Okay.
There you go. You've noticed you've got a book there that was done by the Hanover Improvement Society. We've got a few cases to get rid of, so if you've got the book, find somebody to give it to. But please don't give it back to me. I've got enough to give away.
Yeah.
If you would do that, that would be great. Did any of you have the opportunity to attend the Memorial Muster Day? Nobody was able to go. Too bad.
Well, Ellen.
Oh, Ellen. Good.
And our town clerk.
All right. Super. We had anywhere from 160 to 170 people there. It was well attended. We had the big tent, which thanks to you folks and the Brissett Fund, we were able to put about 190 chairs under it. So it worked out really well. And with the band, the Limetown Band outside, the Hanover Center Church stayed on its foundation last year because we went inside. I was afraid they were going to shake it off its foundation, but that worked well. We had a great speaker, Tina, who works with the woman vets at the VA, and she did a fabulous job. And we had lots of people commenting about how meaningful her talk was. And then, of course, we had this year, we used professional to do the audio. And that was a good idea. He was very good. We had speakers up. And as the kids, as an example, when they came up to do their thing, he would adjust the speakers so they would speak into it. And you could hear everything. And it worked out really well. And then we borrowed one of your portable mics from the rec department, was it? And that was brought over to the cemetery afterwards for the taps and the moment of silence and so on. And Jim, who was the audio guy, knew how to work it, because otherwise it would have just sat there between Kari and I. We didn't even know how to plug it in. But he got it working. So you could hear Ted Brayman when he gave his little talk. The food worked out well. People really came in and grabbed, we had some burritos and ice cream and root beer and cookies, of course, from that famous place across the road, good old Lou's. And in fact, Lou would have been very happy to see $4,500 of his funds being used for this. You know, being a veteran like he was and knowing a lot of other veterans, there's no question he would have said that's a great investment. And in fact, I wanted to comment, Balch Hill, that's a great job you guys have done. Wonderful. Thank you for putting all that new pavement down. The other little thing was one other little comment. You saw the comments from Tina, who was our speaker. And I got a couple little notes from Nancy Wilson, who organizes the Limetown Band. She simply said it was a lovely ceremony. We are pleased to be able to add to it. I will add you to our schedule next year. Thank you both for your excellent organization. Really was a very meaningful ceremony. Nancy. So we didn't strike out, let's put it that way, and I think people really appreciated it. And thank you so much for giving us a little bit of money to work with.
Yeah,
Thank you for doing it.
yes,
For
thank you.
organizing.
No, the tent was really, I think, a great addition, although it's ended up being sunny, and so some people like stood outside the tent to get the sun. There were many, many people who took advantage of the seats and being, able to be in the shade, and that was just great. And I have to say, my job tonight is to talk about next year. 3 years ago, we found out in May that we were going to be doing Memorial Day, and last year was April, and this year I contacted Parks and Rec because somebody contacted me, so I actually knew in March. So I would like to ask that the select board decide that we are going to have Memorial Muster Day again next year. I don't know that we had really a wonderful team, and we built on the team from last year, including Youth in Action, were some of our volunteers this year. And I think that will continue next year. But if we could continue also to have the support through maybe Brissette, given that there's nothing in the budget, and let Parks and Rec know. They seem to feel that that their role has to be limited unless they hear that the select board would like them to be a bit more involved. And again, we don't see them needing to do the whole thing, but for example, do I need to call Bloods next year and coordinate that when they could do it themselves? So if you could sort of decide, are we going to do it? And and maybe give a little more direction that the town should be behind this. That would be really great.
Well, thank you. I know it's been an evolving situation, and I can't speak on behalf of the select board, but I would just say personally, I think it's terrific that we as a town do something on Memorial Day. It's very fitting, and thank you guys for keeping the flame alive, and building it in something much bigger, which is awesome.
Yes, but if we could know before March
Yes.
or April,
Yes.
that would be really
I
great.
hear you loud and clear. Yes.
And we did drop off, not in addition to the books, the program.
Nice.
And I just have to say that on the cover is, of course, Dr. Boffman, who is a great town volunteer firefighter, but also when we lost one of our firefighters to a melanoma, as a dermatologist, he set up screenings for all first responders in the Upper Valley. And, who knows how many, lives that is saved. But as it turns out, there was a photographer last year who captured him talking with who would become our first female Eagle Scout, Grace Healy. So we have Grace Healy and our nonagenarian resident, Dr. Boffman, discussing that particular gravesite. It has a connection to his home. And it was just really, I thought, emblematic of how this event brought so many people together in a way that might not happen otherwise. We do have a core group that I recognize year after year, but there were many people who were there last year who weren't here this year, but other new people were. So it actually reaches different people different years. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave, for this. It's awesome. Thank you.
If you want more, let me know.
Thank you.
She knows.
This is my third one.
Other members of the public who wish to address the select board at this time? Dave?
My name is David Vincelette. I live at 93 Lebanon Street. Because I have a duty a 25-year veteran of the United States Army. I swore an oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. The town and college have polluted our water in violation of the Clean Water Act and falsely imprisoned my family for over 2 years. And nothing has been done by this board to investigate people responsible for upholding us. Jerry, I've been giving you questions, and each meeting you come up with some new reason why you haven't been able to get answers, but I'm wondering if you have any answers for me tonight as to who was allowed to dump asphalt waste in the town supply, and how was the public notified that the town was going to dump asphalt waste on the town roads?
David, as you know, we have received, and I think you were copied on a series of reports from the town manager. It's gotten into some of that history. So I think we have been responsive in that regard.
You haven't answered the question, so I don't know how responsive that's been.
But I'm not going to go through the report verbatim, but history is there, and it's been reviewed by the select board.
I'm just asking you to answer these two questions. I've asked you several questions, and you haven't answered any of them. I've been after the town for 20 years now to come clean about what they did about polluting Mink Brook and Stores Pond. But the town refuses to put on the agenda to bring the Public Works Department in here to answer questions about what was done and who did it and what they knew and when they did it. But nothing like that has happened. You know, we've got Mr. Houseman, who conducted an illegal operation building a fence around our property. Mr. Rassius and Joanna Whitcomb were among the people who signed to have a fence put up around our property. It turned our property into a concentration camp. Mr. Houseman now, he was the zoning officer then. He was willing to hold human beings in unsafe conditions, drinking brook water, no electricity, with little fuel, with little food for over 2 years. And you've promoted him to be the town manager. So he's responsible for more people. He's a federal criminal. And all three of your unions have been involved in federal crimes. The police and the fire department refused to investigate when we called for 2 years to free us from a concentration camp on our property. The Public Works Department was involved in dumping the asphalt waste that was polluting our water that we were drinking. You can't make it up. And yet none of you want to ask me any questions. None of you want to know anything. You're all very happy just to be cowards, sitting there, doing nothing. You have a responsibility to the people to answer questions and to let people know the truth. There's a right to know for the public, but you all are stonewalling. Now, my rights to liberty are given to me by God. Read the Constitution. Natural rights are gifts from God. They're not for government to take away. Restraining me in my property when I was injured, disabled veteran, and not allowing me medical treatment for needed surgery. And the fire department refused to come. The police department refused to come and help us. I was arrested for calling 911. They came down and arrested me, put me in chains. This town needs to face what they've done and start investigating and letting people know.
Other public comments? Yeah. All right. Thank you. Seeing none, let's move on to the reordered business requiring discussion, the first item of which is the organizational meeting 2025-2026 Select Board. I would ask the board that we defer discussion of committee assignments until after we have gone through the Crosby Street presentation, but because Athos is only available for a short time and is not feeling well, and he is on soon, we wanted to get the organizational piece kicked off. So I am now presiding, but I am not going. I mean, let's see where this goes with respect to election of officers. Are there nominations with respect to chair?
I'll nominate you as chair, Carrie, if you would be so kind to put your name in the hat.
I would be willing to serve in that capacity should the select board be willing to have me go. All right, all those in favor?
Do we need to move?
Oh, yes, we need a motion. Yes, okay, so you, all right. Yes.
Can we hear from Athos?
Yes.
Is he only there?
Did we get a second? Oh boy, I'm kind of loud out there, aren't I? Did I hear a second? Yes, I'd second it if that we didn't have one.
Now we have a second. Now discuss, right?
Discuss.
Discuss. It's been moved that as a nomination
Yes.
for chair. Athos is seconded. Now.
Discussion.
I'm in favor. We should vote. Whoa.
Okay, all right.
Who's that?
Thank you. It would be an honor to serve in that capacity. I really feel like I work for you guys and strive to do a good job, and a better job coming year. So thank you. All those in favor, we're ready to vote. In favor?
Aye.
Nominations for vice chair.
I will move to nominate Joanna.
Vice chair. Second?
Second.
Second? Athos? We have a nominee and
Yep.
a second.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Sorry about the dog barking.
Didn't even hear it.
We don't hear the dog. I just like your black star.
I would like to see him, but
We'd like to talk. All right. Unless there's further discussion, all those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Nominees for secretary.
Come on, Jared. Go ahead. We know, I'll move that we nominate Jared for secretary.
I'll second that.
Sorry, this doesn't count.
All those in favor? Let's discussion now. All in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks, Athos. Hope you feel better.
Yes, I'm sorry, folks. I am suffering from jet lag and I caught something on the plane and I have to excuse myself, but thank you very much. I apologize for having to leave.
Take care.
Thanks for dialing in. Thank you. All right. Okay. All right, we will turn now to other items, the first of which I think is Dartmouth College Crosby Street Energy Project update, which involves a presentation. So I know we have members here to present to us. So thank you for coming in.
And given that this is a Dartmouth subject, I'm gonna recuse myself.
Understood.
Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes,
Rob, did you want
sure.
introductory remarks? Yeah.
I would love to make some brief remarks. In the packet, I included a statement. It should be noted that the town has been working with the college over a period of time. I think we're now pushing close to a year and a half. Things have been in a state of flux. There's now some impetus of moving forward with the Crosby Street project, tied in part to a sewer line that's necessitated by the Fairweather project. That's time sensitive. And then the vault itself, which will take a significant amount of time to construct. So I would encourage the board to listen, understand that the college has agreed to make improvements to the Crosby corridor in conjunction with our planning efforts at the time this project comes to conclusion. And with that, I would ask that they introduce themselves and make a presentation.
Good evening. My name is Eric Bray. I'm the Senior Director of Energy Transition with Dartmouth College.
I'm Julia Pfeiffer. I'm the Assistant Director of Energy Transition.
We also have with us this evening David Anderson, our Senior Planner with our Campus Planning Office. And we have our Traffic Consultant, Erica, with a W, and I don't want to promise I would say it correctly, and I apologize.
We got it.
We got it. We're off to a good start. So go back to the next slide. So for our meeting agenda tonight, we wanted to do through introductions to talk briefly about the energy transition overview, our distribution piping high-level view 5-year plan, the Crosby Street work, to date, our town coordination and commitments, a logistics plan overview, some brief discussion on our traffic study, and then communications and questions. So we'll try to move it along. There's a lot to cover, but we weren't sure how much you had seen in the recent past. So
Not much. Not much. We haven't seen
not
much.
much. Okay.
And if you could speak up a little bit,
Sure.
just for the benefit of the audience. Yep.
I'll do my best. All right, so the Dartmouth Climate Collaborative, there's 4 pillars of action: operations, campus as a living lab, scholarship, and teaching. And the collaborative will connect, strengthen, and leverage Dartmouth's existing work on climate and sustainability. And the college will invest more than $500 million in climate-related capital improvements, with the campus becoming a living lab as these projects being drivers of new research, teaching, collaboration, and a greener together. Our operations focus and goals for the energy transition is a renewal and replacement of aging campus heating and cooling infrastructure, improved electrical heating and cooling resilience, provision of heating and cooling and electrical service to future and existing buildings, and significant and permanent reductions in our energy usage, cost, and carbon emissions. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, so since this may be the first time you've all heard about our program, we thought it would be a good idea to talk about the components of what it is we're going to be installing across campus. And see my cursor here. It's a combination of geothermal well fields with geothermal heat pumps, electrical components, our hot water holding tanks, distribution piping, and building conversions. And what we're really going to focus in on talking about today is our distribution piping, which is represented here by these red and blue lines. And as you'll see as we get into it, this graphic doesn't do justice with how complex this installation of distribution piping really is. So we're going to dive into that next. This is a high-level view of currently what's going on distribution-wise and what we would like to install over the next 5 years. And some of this, you'll notice, is already, occurring out in the field. So these pipes are going in right now. Some of this has already been installed. Some of this is future that's going to be installed, but this is really a snapshot of five years. And for the purpose of this presentation, what we want to do is really focus in on Crosby Street.
Julie, do you mind just going back for a second? Sure. So what's striking here, of course, is that there's a big gap. I mean, is that because it's hooking into an existing, so these are just additions to or replace? How does that work?
Yeah, well, this is just the first 5 years. So what you're seeing here is part of a planned loop. So there'll be future piping that comes up here and connects and also comes up here and connects. And there's also existing piping. If you remember that we put in 5-7 years ago, the North to West Utilities Project, and we dug up going across campus. So there's future pipe, there's existing pipe that's going to be connected into what you see here as a series of loops across campus.
This slide represents just the new construction for the next 5 years, tying into the existing. And apologies for the graphic, it is overlaid on a campus map that on our slide looks great. It's a little washed out.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. So this is just the next 5 years. How many years does this project go on for?
Well, it is a 10+ year program with multiple components, distribution pipe and building conversions, heat pumps across campus. So, you know, this is an investment that we're making over a larger chunk of time.
The overall end goal is to be carbon neutral by 2050.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions on the map? Okay. We'll dive into Crosby Street. So what you see here is a vault that's going to be installed on the north end of Crosby Street. And the reason that I zoomed in on this is because it kind of shows the size and complexity of that vault, which is really the driver of the 18-month duration that we're going to need to close Crosby Street. And these lines represent duct bank piping, sewer work, and other utilities that need to be run down Crosby Street, which is really you know, kind of one of the main arteries of the loops that we're going to be installing.
Which is the vault, Julia?
The vault is this box right here.
At the end of Crosby, adjacent to East Wheelock Street.
And for those who don't know is it like a big tank?
Yeah, this one in particular is going to be very big. It's going to be able to fit several people inside while they're working. It holds a series of valves that control the flow of the piping that we're installing. And it's a really complex area to work to because there's a lot of existing utilities, steam, that we need to keep live in that area while we're working because we're still on the steam infrastructure. Other existing utilities that are in the area. So yeah, that's the function of the vault.
Are the ones along East Wheelock the ones we've already seen go in, or is there additional ones going in on East Wheelock?
Both are correct.
Yeah, both are correct. Yeah, there are a series of vaults throughout the whole program. This happens to be one of the biggest and most complex vaults that have to be installed. But yeah, we've installed others in other locations, and there will be more in the future as well.
The scale of this vault, this room, is about 29 by 32 feet, and it must be below sewer and water. So there will be a big hole while it's cast in place. It can't be cast off-site. It needs to be cast in place, which triggers some of the time needs here.
Right. Okay. So, you know, coming in next is, which I think is the most important part of this, is town coordination commitments. We did not go into this in a vacuum. We wanted to make sure that we engage the town and our partners in multiple offices to make sure that everybody is aware of this well before this plan comes to pass. So we went to Public Works, Police and Parking, Planning and Zoning, Fire Department, Town Manager, and the Hanover School Administration to go through this plan and make sure that we got everybody's feedback and implement as much as we could to make sure that we weren't just you know, presenting something that nobody had had a chance to see yet. So this has been out on the street, and we've been getting comments for a long time, and we thank our partners throughout all of those town offices that gave us their time. There's a licensing agreement that Dartmouth has agreed to enter into, which is, I believe, typical for this type of utility work that occurs on campus. We know there's going to be a restoration piece to this that we're going to have to work closely with Rob and Public Works office to implement when the time comes. So we've discussed that. There are parking components to this as well. We know we're going to have to purchase all of the parking spots along Crosby Street and some parking spots along the north end as well. And we're fully prepared to do that. And of course, there's safety and risk concerns as well. And we've ensured that our contractor is going to have a full-time logistics manager that works to make sure that the contractors are enforcing their their own logistics plans and safety plans as we move along. And Dartmouth has a safety department and consultant as well that we're going to be making sure that everybody is operating in a safe manner and within the confines of the logistics plan. Does anyone have any questions about that? I feel like I covered a lot in that slide.
Oh. Yeah, do you have something?
No.
Oh, I was just wondering more, so you're working with Public Works and a town manager to restore it. How does that all unfold?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a process. There's nothing that is set in stone in terms of restoration yet. You know, we've been in talks with Rob about the directions that the town would like to go in terms of future planning and some studies that are going on right now. We're partnering with his office to make sure that, you know, we put things back in a manner that's commensurate with those studies.
What do you guys want to do?
Looking at the safe route for all, safe road, street for all road in particular, excuse me. That's one of the drivers. Yeah.
Or the shared street.
Shared street.
plan?
I'm sorry,
I know, that's confusing.
I used the wrong term. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, move on to the next one. So this is a high level view of our overall logistics plan, just to give an idea of the scope of what's happening in this area. So the plan right now is to close the entirety of Crosby Street. For the first phase of our work, only the northern portion that's shown in orange is going to be closed to all traffic. The southern green portion is going to be open to pedestrians, emergency vehicles, and certain deliveries. And that was actually a result of feedback that we got from the town and how we're approaching our logistics plan and how we're looking at our phasing, which was really good feedback. So we also have other construction that is either already going on in the area or is planned in the future. It's kind of shown in different colored dotted lines. There are street crossings that we're going to have to do, which Rob mentioned, for sewer piping and some other things. So, you know, those again are going to be under separate permits, but we wanted to present them here to just show that we know all the parts and pieces that are happening in the area, and we're looking at it as one big piece, and nobody's working as a silo in our office to make sure that we're fully coordinated within this area.
Where are the other the street crossings are all the red dashes, or?
Yeah, so the street crossing right here and right here are gonna happen this summer, and they're planned to happen at night, because we don't want to further impact the daytime traffic, because we know we're doing a lot of work during the day already, so.
So that'll be dug up and then replaced next morning.
Well, no, it's
Single
gonna
lane.
be single lane closures overnight, correct? Yeah, I don't know the exact duration off the top of my head, but it's gonna be longer.
Road will be functional.
Yeah. Two lanes by morning, yep.
So Julia, were you suggesting that this is only for the first phase, the second phase would?
Yes, so this orange shows the first phase of actual construction work. We didn't wanna only close half of the street because we didn't want traffic to bottleneck and have to turn around halfway up, right? So we came up with this gate system. We employed, brought in two consultants, actually, Wall Traffic Consulting and also Engineering Ventures, to make a pretty complex phasing plan, which I've kind of distilled into this map that shows, you know, signage and phasing and how it's all going to fit together. But for this, the important thing is what we're really focusing on is closing off our street and having our construction activities happen north of this blue line. And then as we move south, you know, there is piping that's going to have to come all the way down here. So we're going to permit these items separately with town, just to ensure that we have emergency egress. When you move into this area, emergency egress for vehicles gets a little complicated, because right now they're going to be coming through here. But if we close this off, we're going to need to have them come from the opposite direction, which is one of the things we've looked at in future phasing.
So the 18 months, is that the entirety of all the phases?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
For Crosby Street.
For Crosby Street, yep.
Yeah.
What's your confidence level on the 18 months?
I mean, if we say 18 months, it's gonna be 18 months.
Well, we're highly confident.
Okay, all right.
A little bit of nuance in terms of potential reality. There's old infrastructure on that road.
Yeah.
We feel we've adequately forecasted for that, but there needs to be one qualifier that, we don't know until we dig. We've scanned the road, we understand what's mapped there, but when you're dealing with 70 to 100-year-old infrastructure, always there could be obstacles that we couldn't anticipate, but we will message early and often if there's any deviation. But our goal now is to meet or exceed the 18 months, knowing that infrastructure is there. But
yeah,
could we guarantee that? I don't know that would not be prudent to do.
that's a better answer. That's why Eric is here. Make sure that I don't step on my own toes.
We're working together.
And once we get through the northern part, in this vault, we're hoping that it'll get us a little bit of flexibility as we move south. But we're gonna learn a lot more once we start digging and really seeing in reality what's under the streets. Any other questions about the logistics plan before we?
Is the health center gonna be open during this?
Yes.
And then are there any, or maybe, are there any plans for pedestrian circulation to some of the sporting events and practices?
Yeah, the pedestrian walkways are shown in green here, and we know that the football stadium has some needs for AV equipment to be parked here, so we're trying to plan this phase around that. We also know that during football season, there's an added amount of pedestrian traffic that comes out of the football stadiums, so we're trying to take that into account as we move through our phasing. The most important thing for us is to make sure that we've mitigated the risks and we're operating safe and.
Yeah, this will make it a lot safer because we, had some people hit on Crosby.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of challenges and mitigations, we've not only floated this past the offices in Hanover, but also employed our consulting partners to help us mitigate some challenges and risks that we've seen regarding pedestrians and motorists, bottlenecks at Crosby Street, emergency vehicle and fire access. The fire department has been a great partner in walking the site and trying to help us troubleshoot some of that. And selected vehicle access was one of the issues. How do we let emergency vehicles in, but not regular traffic, which is why we've got our electric keypad gates to make sure that we can control the flow of traffic. And the public school year was something else that we needed to take into consideration, because what we didn't want to do was close Crosby Street a week before school closed and create a bunch of heartache right at the end of the school year. So the planned closure is the day after school ends, so that way we can start fresh in the fall. And that was something that the school administrators were on board with that approach. So we also had a traffic study done to look at the main intersections and how the Crosby Street closure would affect those intersections. So here, what this shows basically is that these little circles show existing traffic level of service on the left and Crosby detour level of service on the right. The top of the circle is AM and the bottom of the circle is PM. And really what that shows is that the Crosby Street closure does not change the level of service rating in any of those intersections.
D's are still D's.
They're still D's.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't make them worse.
Can I ask Erica a question?
Of course.
Level of service, we're talking about delay here and not safety.
Right, this is all about congestion and delay in town. We did actually do counts at 16 intersections. These are just the closest signalized intersections that we're using as a proxy for kind of a measure of performance throughout the town. And we didn't see any kind of notable change in delay that people would experience as they travel in their cars through town. We looked at a little bit of, do we need to change any of the signal timings to help mitigate the changing travel patterns? It's possible that the the co-op intersection might need to be a little bit tweaked, but it's a pretty minor change and the other intersections did well. I mean, they all do fine even without any changes, but that was the one that most obviously might benefit from tweaking.
How do you, were you counting traffic on Crosby and sort of inferring where it would go?
Yeah, so we counted, as I mentioned, we counted traffic at 16 intersections throughout town, including both ends of Crosby. We made some assumptions in terms of trying to be realistic about the analysis, and it's hard to predict. The people who are using that are generally doing cut throughs. You know, there's some use right on site, but the majority are passing through. The counts actually were indicative of that, where the vehicles turning onto Crosby were generally very close to the number of vehicles turning off Crosby. And you know, they match, like an eastbound left becomes a northbound right. You know, the pattern you would think. One of the things I kind of use to picture Crosby is it's kind of the center of an X for people trying to go from southeast to northwest and southwest to northeast. I hope I'm not getting it flipped in my head. And vice versa. I recognize you. And we see that in the volumes. And so looking at kind of where they're coming from and where they're going to, what are the logical paths that they would take and where do we want them to go? And made some assumptions in terms of where they would reroute based on that. You know, there's some number of people who are going to do some pretty crazy routes just because they feel better driving and moving than any sort of like mild congestion they might experience, but it's hard to predict those sorts of, you know, the handful of unpredictable changes that, but you know, assuming that most people make reasonably logical replacement routes, this is what we anticipate seeing.
The total, I'm sorry, what was the total number of average vehicles on Crosby?
Let's see, I have the numbers in front of me here. This is peak hour volumes. And so, well, it's hard to add up all at the same time, but kind of the northwest southeast pairing, there's 48 in one direction, 64 in the other direction in the morning, and 60 and 72 in the afternoon. In our other kind of dimension, we've got 71 and 95 in the morning, and then about 100, 140 in the afternoon. And so the volumes are, it's not trivial, right? It's not 20 vehicles, but it's not a huge number of cars that need to kind of make their way.
So those are just like for an hour or so?
Those are hourly volumes, right?
At the peaks.
And we did look at, you know, we counted, we got a ton of data and we looked at the AM peak, which tends to be the vehicular peak. We looked at the PM peak, which is, you know, the PM vehicular peak, but we also looked at pedestrian peak periods during the day. And initially we're intending to model multiple hours, but it turned out in this particular area, that PM peak hour, the vehicular PM peak overlaps basically with the kind of the combined total of pedestrians and vehicles is as busy as it gets in this area during that PM peak hour. And I think that's, you know, students going to the gym in the evening and that sort of thing. Other parts of campus tend to peak in the afternoon during class change periods, but this area is a little bit further removed from the academic patterns. And so we see really that PM peak was the busiest.
I had two questions. One, how do you find the peaks? That was the first. And then I was wondering if you looked at Summer Street as well? Or did that not factor?
It does factor. Let's see, how do we find the peaks? We count. I wish it was more fancy than that. We count vehicles and we identify the time period that has the largest number of vehicles. In a situation where we're looking at a network, we line up all the different locations that we're concerned with and we find the overlapping peak. In this area, we counted 16 intersections, but we didn't use 16 intersections to identify the peak, right? Like we care about the busy time right around Crosby and the surrounding intersections because those are the ones that are going to be most impacted. we want to look at all the other intersections and we're sensitive to them, but it's really what's going to happen during that busiest time when the most vehicles are on Crosby and trying to find another route that we're most concerned with. And we do the same thing for the pedestrians. For the pedestrians, the peak we looked at was a much smaller area. You know, I think we looked at College and Wheelock and the two ends of Crosby to identify what the pedestrian peak activity is in this area. We did look at Summer Street. It wasn't, those two intersections aren't intersections that we're particularly concerned with in terms of the rerouting. The routing changes that we expect to see.
Maybe you should have looked at Summer.
Sorry. There's a particular sensitivity around accessing the school and the need to arrive at the school with bus doors on the school side. And so that was something we were particularly sensitive to. There's a lot of congestion around the school in the morning. We spent a lot of time looking at those patterns and those behaviors. There's a good 15 minutes where that queue is spilling back pretty far, and then it resolves. And that's kind of a typical behavior that you're going to see at any sort of school, but certainly high school. That's not something you're really going to do anything about, right? Like that's going to happen. Well, I have worked with schools that have stacking that goes all the way around the outside of the perimeter. Like they have a driving lane that just like I don't know how you know, wraps around the perimeter so they could do all their stacking on site. And that's one way to handle that, but most places don't want that much vehicular storage for something that's happening for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if there are any more questions on the traffic study specifically, we can move into the bus route. Yeah, so like Erica said, we know that the buses need to stack a certain way going to the school. So we provided the school administrators, when we presented to them, a series of just suggestions and recommendations of how the buses could reapproach the school with minimal impact to bus routes and the timing. And these are the two recommendations that we gave just based on direction that the buses are coming from. And the administrators seem to think that these were appropriate. And of course, you know, it'll be up to the bus companies, but we wanted to provide recommendations based on the data that we gathered as well.
So Julie, on that though, so the southbound line road traffic you're suggesting could get split into, in yellow is two routes?
It's just two options.
Okay.
Like you could go either way.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions about busing or traffic? Move into communications. So we've put a great deal of thought into communicating both, you know, with the town and town offices, the select board, but also to the public at large. So we're going to have a dedicated webpage for Crosby Street work. There's going to be site signage also posted with a 24/7 number that goes to our facilities customer service center that gets answered 24/7. So we can have responses if there are issues during off hours or weekends. And we've proposed also having a press release in the Valley News just to, you know, send it out there to as many folks as possible.
You say we will have a dedicated webpage. That's a Dartmouth webpage.
Yes, it's a
Okay.
Dartmouth webpage. Yep.
Is there any thought to somehow link it to?
Practice of the town is to have a link and inform the public to tap on this. We deployed this for Rennie Farm originally, and it was useful. And we continue to. I don't want to belabor it, but the bus route study indicates a minimal impact of less than 3 minutes, so approximately 3 minutes. Change.
That's really all we had to present, but if there are any other questions or any items for open discussion.
I had a question about the bus route.
Sure.
It's only like 3 minutes to circle all the way around. That was the question I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Was there any consideration of giving the students an option to get off and just walk from one of the existing bus stops? on like left the Thompson lot?
It's like, that would be probably a question for the school administrators and the bus company. We didn't specifically look at that, in our recommended bus route, because we wanted to stay within the confines of.
Pulling up to the,
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly right. So it may be an option that the school
Yeah.
is willing to look at.
And I do want to, if there are any other questions, I don't want to interrupt, but if we're going to bring this to a closure.
Yes.
When September rolls around, if there are things that we need to address, we will address them, working with Dartmouth, to make sure that it runs smoothly.
yeah. I was just thinking it'd be great to have those full counts for the shared streets vision of the two intersections, that we have the full counts to pick the peak hours.
Have you sent them?
I haven't seen those.
We shared them with Public Works, maybe.
Yeah.
That email out.
They went to Carolyn Readers directly.
I've seen the peak hour ones, but I got the ones shared with Carolyn, but I
Okay.
didn't see the full 24-hour
I'll
count.
see what we have.
Yeah,
To be clear, there is only one place that we did 24-hour counts. Some of the locations, we counted many hours in many places. Some of those were just either if we knew what that peak hour was, we would count, like up on Maynard. We really just need that one peak hour that we're analyzing. And so I think it's only 2 hours in Maynard, on the Maynard streets, Maynard intersections. College and Wheelock, Crosby, those have probably 7 or 8 hours of data that we counted. We're trying to be efficient about what we counted to, because it's a big effort. Any data that we've collected for this or for actually a couple other studies we've done, we sent to Rob with the full raw data. We have.
yeah, I guess I was, for college and Wheelock, I didn't see anything around, it was on a Wednesday, I didn't see anything around 2 when was like the high schools and stuff get out. So I didn't know if that was counted or it's just obviously not a peak hour, or I didn't know.
Yeah, the peak at College and Wheelock tends to be earlier because it's when the college class change times happen. So we see that around like 11:15 and 12:30, I think, is when we see the pedestrian peaks at College and Wheelock, and then again at like 6 o'clock at night when students are going to like the gym and things. The high school student peak, we see that really just at the Crosby Lebanon intersection and the Summer Lebanon intersection, but they tend not to. There's not enough of them coming up onto campus that shifts any of the peaks up on kind of campus. But I think I've sent Rob all the data that we have.
And it's been shared. So if you haven't, Carolyn has everything that.
Okay, great. Yeah, because that'd be helpful.
Okay, anything else? Any members of the public have any questions that they would like to? All right. Yes, Nancy Carter. Yes.
When we get to talk about the thousands of dump trucks that go through town with hundreds of cubic feet of soil from this project.
Well, for this project, well, now would be the time to.
So this project is not the bore fields. I think that's what Nancy's referring to. And the bore fields, I believe, is in a state of flux at this time. They're looking at a new approach that may alter that.
I was aware of that. I just wanted to flag it early. Thank you. Thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Nancy. Anything else from members of the public? Okay. All right, not seeing any then. Thank you very much, Eric, Julia, David, Erica. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Joanna,
Yes.
come on back up.
Oh, I was just hanging out.
She likes it here. Her kids are here.
Right. Rob, your team.
Sure. I believe the DEER team is asked to present tonight through Jared. We added them to the agenda. I do want to make it make the board aware of our timing at a staff level. And that our timing, the deadline for the application of your team is July 1, I believe. We typically try to file it the second or third week of June, relying on the college to work with us to develop a DRT map. So that's underway as we speak. And the purpose of setting the stage for this is because it's unclear to me, based on what I've reviewed and how the boundary change would impact our current practice, whether we have to get landowner permission in writing, which is the current practice, develop a new map authorizing, including each property that has given us that authority, and then figuring how we distribute that map to the hunting population is the challenge for us. So with that, I want you guys more than welcome to tee this up to the board.
Is Deer Team an official name?
Got it, dear
It's unofficial.
Okay.
Biodiversity.
Okay, all right.
Well, the amplifiers work really good. If I miss it the first time, I get it on feedback the second time.
We'll work on it. Thank you, Don.
I'm gonna let Barbara start.
Okay, well, the Deer Team was formed by Julia Griffin when we were first looking to request the DMAP option, which was adopted, and we're the only town now that is using it, unfortunately, but we've learned a lot. And I'm not a hunter, but I know about plants, and so I'm sort of in charge of the trillium stations that you might find in the woods.
Can you just step back for our viewing public? So we're the only town in the state of New Hampshire that allows more deer hunting per person than any other town. That's correct?
Not quite.
Okay, well, and I guess, so hold that question. And then the other thing is, we're doing this because we have an overpopulation of deer that are over browsing our woods and eating our native species and allowing us to experience ticks when we walk in the woods as well, right? I mean, that's the part of the why, is that correct?
It's in large part, it's that we're losing diversity in the woods.
Okay.
Like too many deer and not enough
Predators for those deer.
predators.
Okay, thank you.
We're also, there is no regeneration basically anywhere in downtown Hanover that's not man planted or anything that deer eat. A few things like beech, et cetera, still survive because they don't eat it, but pine, but anything else, maple, oak, ash, and other stuff that gets over 6 inches, they eat it. Trillium, everything. We are the only town that has DMAP permits. Vicki Smith wrote the proposal 5 years ago, and the state adopted it. And we are the only town that has that, and that allows us to have extra tags to committees that draw tags in the raffle. And it gives us 2 extra tags for this zone, which is basically Pineo Hill, Dogford Road, down to Hypertherm, and then back up to Greensboro and in. It's a very tight area. We have to have a minimum number of acres, which we have, which I believe is 600 acres, but we have that in the water company land, plus other individual landowners in that area. But what happens is, as predicted, as soon as the deer get hunted, they went nocturnal. And we know that by cameras. They don't come out of my yard at daylight for any day in the month of October, November, December. So anyway, we've asked for a bigger zone because the deer, as soon as they're shot here, they move in from outside. In the first year, we had 68. Next year, 65 deer. And it's gone down to 40 the last 2 years. But the deer have gone nocturnal. They've moved to areas that aren't pressured. So we're trying to move outside that zone to a bigger region. It'll be the same number of permits, but in a bigger area. We did a browse survey a few weeks ago, a month ago, and there wasn't any place in the town of Hanover from a line property, a line boundary down that didn't have deer browse. If you could find a tree that they browsed on, because there weren't any more. We're basically asking for permission to expand that zone. The town has to request that. The state has already approved to give us 3 extra deer per person, people that draw in the lottery. So they know the problems there. The state has now agreed to have this zone have crossbows, more accurate, et cetera, et cetera. More people can use crossbows and can use bows. So anyway, we're just asking permission to expand that zone.
In terms of multi-use management, so I understand expanding the zone, and what are we doing to minimize impact on, other users of the woods, like bikers and hikers and?
Barbara wants to answer that one, but anyway, some of the people in the mountain bike group and the Tresca group have talked about closing the water company land for the month of November during hunting season. I don't know where that is now, but that's been a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
We think we have more interference by other people than we have on them.
I mean, my unprofessional, educated or uneducated opinion is that the risk to people, hikers and bikers, is very, very low. But one of the reasons why we've talked about, the team has talked about closing the Trustcott lands is because as soon as a mountain biker goes through, it spooks all the deer and they go running. And in order to have a successful hunt, you need to be able to see deer that are standing still and be able to shoot at them. And so it reduces the ability to do that. The only other thing I want to add is that currently the zone where these DMAP permits are allowed, there is some private land, but it's very, very small amount of private land that these are allowed on. It's primarily the Truscott lands and then that tract of land that's kind of like behind Jesse's. It's very, very heavily hunted already without the DMAP permits. So as soon as rifle season, I mean, even during bow season, it's pretty well hunted. As soon as rifle season opens, within a day or two, you're not going to see deer there anymore. So by opening up some of the lands in conserved lands and town-owned lands up into Etna, where a lot of these deer are going, we'll just help with this issue that we have of pretty severe overpopulation in the town.
I could ask a question. So when you're talking about potentially expanding the land, this is into larger tracts of land, not like into town?
We're asking the state. We're not sure they're going to give us one of those deals. You ask for what you get and take what you get, but we've asked to go all the way to the town boundaries. Reality is probably will be on the west side of Moose Mountain Ridge, in this area, because it's still in the G1 zone on the west side, but it's a different geography over there, different habitat, different deer. So we're trying to expand it bigger. And the current zone does not have a hard boundary by a road. It's just a line that's drawn out there. So that's hard for everybody. So we're asking to go out to the town boundaries.
I think the standard for fishing game is that the boundaries, the parcels within the approved district can be included if the total minimum acreage is 1 acre.
Correct.
So if you and your neighbors get together, put your parcels together, and the combined total is 1 acre, it can be in this zone for hunting.
And this doesn't change the laws in terms of firearms or anything like that. All this does is it allows hunters to use more doe, to basically get more doe tags. So typically, you can buy archery tags in addition to your, I can't remember, is it one? You get 1 buck tag and 1 doe tag. Normally, if you just with a regular hunting license,
it's 1 buck tag, and bow tag can have a buck and a doe tag.
Right.
So that's 3 if you do it, and then 2 more for the DMAP. This year it'll be an additional one, so it can be six deer in Hanover, if you get the right combination.
Right, so basically, it's not allowing hunters to use firearms in town or anything like that. The laws around the weapon you can use and all that kind of stuff remains the same. All it does is increase the number of tags that we would have eligible hunters for in town.
What is the zone? My question was about like the area, the zone. I know you're saying not in town, but like the river trail is very popular. Nobody thinks hunting is allowed in there because it feels like it's in town. Most of the Dartmouth students who come from Maple Street, and it's just an extension. No one has any idea that hunting is allowed there. And that's right in town. I would prefer that not be, like, people are walking dogs, there are little kids, it's just like a whole bunch of people who do not know that hunting is allowed. They do not dress up in orange to go for this very regular walk. And so my question was, what is the zone? Not how the tag system works,
right,
but in what area would it allow people to shoot or deer with a gun or a crossbow? And how is that defined?
So Jenny, I think that is a different conversation because
I thought that was the question was, can we expand the zone?
this is the deer management area zone, which would be the areas where hunters could use these extra tags. So we're not talking about allowing hunting in different places. That we're not changing any, or the deer team is not asking to change any of that. All the issue on the table is where these extra tags would be eligible to be used.
I'll send you the map. Yeah. The current map.
From the zoning?
No, the current deer map.
The current deer map, yeah.
And I think if you wanted to make something like a hunter safety or a wildlife safety zone or something like that, or basically posted town land, that would be a different discussion.
Yeah.
Outside of this one.
I guess I have to ask, has it been a problem?
Well, there was a confrontation and there are some deer carcasses left, and there's a lot of
did hunters kill them? Did the cars kill them? Did the dogs kill them? Did the coyotes kill them? Did the bears kill them?
I don't know who killed the deer.
So we have dead deer.
Yeah.
We have dead skunks.
Right.
We have a dead deer on Pineo Hill, a big piece of hide that somebody killed it recently.
Yeah, I'm not claiming to know how the deer died.
Yeah.
So.
You know, state laws still apply. Can't fire a firearm in somebody's backyard. You can use bullets with permission. It's all by permission. We're just asking to push the boundary out the less populated part.
Who's changing?
Yeah, so.
Car.
Yes, if I may, I'll say it's sort of more a statement that I support. So my name's Kari Asmus, and as I mentioned before, I live between Etna and Hanover Center. Sort of more specifically, I live in a place that has seen more deer in the past 2 years. So I think that some of the migration is happening to where I live, and we are seeing a lot more ticks. So I'm looking at this, I mean, yes, I care about plants, whether it's in my garden or, the wildflowers, but what I'm really looking at this is a public health issue. I can come in with 2 to 3 ticks on me, but it's just as likely this year that it's 6 to 10. I can, go out, have my cuff buttoned as tightly as it can, my shirt's tucked into my pants into my socks. I have a hat with a bug cap, it goes under the arms, and I can still come in with a tick behind my ear because it's a numbers game. And the more tick there are, the more one of them is going to get, onto you. And last Friday morning, I really lost the numbers game. And then I woke up with the 6-inch bullseye rash for where I had removed a tick the night before. So I was lucky enough, of course, to go see a doctor, get doxycycline. And, he said, well, I can give you the 1 dose, but given your history of where I live, he said, I really recommend the 10-day course of doxycycline. And it's like, yeah, I think you're probably right. That's the smart thing to do. But then he said, well, just beware, the doxycycline is good for Lyme and the anaplasmosis, which we've had diagnoses of here in Hanover. And he said, but there's an emerging tick-borne illness, babesiosis. He said, so if you continue to have symptoms, you need to come back because that's going to require an anti-parasitic drug. So I can't stress enough how important I think this is to look at it as a public health and not something that we should wait for a year. I would also say that as somebody who has never posted my land, has always had hunters, welcome, and they're going to go from my 10-acre parcel to my neighbors, so that's 80 acres. It doesn't matter to me if they just have their regular license or if they have a license with a doe tag. And I have to say, we've lost some of our native hunting population to either they've moved away or actually, they've passed away. So we have fewer hunters. And so when I have a service person come to my house, I sometimes say, by chance, are you a hunter? And one of them who said, well, I don't hunt in New Hampshire. I only do Vermont, but I know somebody who does. And I bet he'd like to have a doe tag. And I didn't even say to that person, well, it wouldn't work where I live, but it would be so helpful to me if the hunters that are going to be hunting in my neighborhood could also have an additional doe tag. And it's hard for me to think that the state, when you're already allowing people hunt where it's not posted, that they would need the requirement to have somebody hunt with a doe tag versus just hunting with the regular license. That makes no sense. So I would push back on that. And I would just say, if you could do anything possible to have this happen sooner rather than later, when, we're experiencing the downside of what the policy has been in town. I just can't encourage you strongly enough. So thank you for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Karen. Other comments or questions? All right.
What do you need from us? Yeah.
I mean, if the board endorses the expansions of the municipal boundaries, we can reach out to Fish and Game to see what it'll take to do it. And if we can incorporate it in a little additional staff time and resources, we can accomplish it. Otherwise, we'll carry it out for next year. I mean, we have about 60 hours of staff time tied up in the permitting process. And we also have about $800 in mailing expense because we mail them out now rather than have them handed out by the town clerk, which is much cleaner, simpler, but there is a cost to it. So we need to recognize that it does take time and tax dollar resources.
Select board thoughts?
I'm in favor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to.
All right, thank you very much. So Rob, sounds like, let's see what we can do. If it gets done this year, that's better. Can't
Thanks, Donnie.
get that one. Can't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Barbara.
And you're sending them out, yeah. You're
Yeah.
sending them out.
I just sent an email to Alex, to get a copy of the map, the 2024 map, which I believe is what we're building
Yeah.
for 2025. And I'll have that sent to you.
Yeah.
2019 is on our website. I couldn't find anything. I don't think it's changed, but I want to make sure you have the most current.
Right. So it's just like it's a subset of where people hunt, and then that subset will expand
Yep.
based on their requests and whatever New Hampshire state decides. Sort of the.
So yes, and my understanding is there is the request has been made to expand the boundaries to municipal boundaries. It doesn't change the law on how hunters behave. So if lands are posted, or if they're within the urban compact area, which is defined as 3 houses within a certain distance of each other, the rifles cannot be used. There are restrictions on the type of weapon that can be used. So if a neighborhood on Low Road got together and said, we're tired of our hostas being eaten, and they authorize it, someone could hunt that neighborhood on those lands with a bow, for example. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I'll get you the map.
Yeah, I think I understand how this zone expansion works. Yeah.
So it'll be allowing additional doe tags, or I learned the term non-antlered deer.
Yes.
Non-antlered deer tags. So it would allow for more deer to be taken in Hanover, specifically non-antlered deers.
All right, is there anything else? Let's move on to next topic.
Could I suggest we reorganize the schedule, get through Ledyard Park and the fee review and bond bank action?
Yes.
Send stuff and leave.
Yes. Let's do that. Great. Fair. Barbara.
We submitted a draft letter to Fish and Game. It would be wonderful to have the town governing body support this. I think it's really helpful to have people explaining what's going on. And the problem I've been watching, we got these permits back in 2018. So this is now the 8th year coming up. And in that time, I'll just tell you what we've learned just from looking at Trillium Station, which has an exclosure with Trillium in it. After 3 years, those Trillium now have started to bloom. Inside a cage now, some of the stations have lots of flowering Trillium. Outside, there are 2 control plots. These are all just a square meter in size. And these control plots have Trillium. If these plants are there now, and I'm just talking about South Esker, where we have a station, within a month, anything that came up in a control plot that's out there is gone, totally gone. Deer eat everything in that control plot. Trillium requires years to get established, and we won't have them. And it's the town flower. But I mean, this is just an example of what's happening with just one species. This is happening to all kinds of species where the ground nesting birds don't have habitat. So I just say that the Trillium is just an example of what's happening to the vegetation that should be out there. And so message gets through, and I hope you can send that letter.
You have our support, and
Okay, great.
Rob, if there's a letter, you'll have our full support.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you. Okay. All right. Let's move on to Ledyard Park. Yes.
This is the update. This is being presented as an update to the board and the public to understand what's moving forward as a public-private partnership. The area in question is between Ledyard Bank and the J-Mark property. It's a pea stone area with a small garden in the middle currently. I'll try to move quickly through this. These photographs, starting in the upper left, represent the existing condition. The upper left and upper right show specifically the area where the park is proposed. The next slide gives you an overhead view of the architect and landscape architect rendering of the concept. Starting at the left side of the screen, there's a seating area and a space reserved for a food truck if appropriate. Something that needs to be considered in an ordinance update if we're going to go this route. Moving to the right side of the screen, there's an area designed for performance and seating. And there are some architectural structures proposed. This screen gives you a view of the concept here. Looking, if we start on the right side of the screen, looking down the park without the food truck or chairs and tables in place, you'll see the architectural features. You see sunscreens designed for the summertime use and a mural at this point being focused on the Appalachian Trail and how Hanover fits within the Appalachian Trail. And then the bottom left gives you perspective of what it would look like built out. And bottom right, looking from the end of the park towards Main Street. The fundraising proposal that we're moving forward with, hopefully fairly soon, is a buy a brick program. This buy a brick program is expected to raise close to $160,000 and close the gap on the construction of this project. And it will include a donation from the Rotary, and with that, the Rotary Peace Pole will be incorporated into it. There are some other features that will be designed into this, including the permanent seating for the performance area and use outside of performance areas activity. Some knockdown bollards to allow for security so that someone doesn't jump the curb and drive into it, and some other features. The tables themselves, they're not going to be fixed. The idea here is give people the opportunity to move the tables in clusters and groups. The experience at the locals and elsewhere has indicated that they don't wander frequently, they wander at all. So I think that flexibility creates some opportunities for us. And I note that this is a public-private partnership. The town is funding the design. We'll host the fundraising process, but the fundraising is being coordinated through the Downtown Business Group. And we have secured a license agreement for 20 years on this property with Ledyard Bank. And they have committed capital to this in addition to the fundraising capital proposed by the Rotary. So that's where we stand. Questions, comments? I'm excited.
Looks awesome.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
And I was just studying my select board material at the library on the bricks out. And so, that was a big fundraising thing. So I'm assuming that's what you mean, like the brick fundraiser thing.
Dave has really done a lion's share of the work as well as Chris and Paul.
Yeah, we have a kind of draft webpage to solicit these donations for the engraved bricks. And so we'll finalize that as soon as these materials are finalized, and then we'll work with the downtown group to move forward. And as I was kind of helping develop the webpage, realize that this is included in the town's master plan as a recommendation. So this is really further into that, which is awesome.
It's a nice little Ellsworth Kelly tie-in, which I just
It's a very good tie-in.
It's very nice. Carly.
Yes, so Carly answer this. First of all, I just want to, thank everybody for all the work on this and the fundraising effort, which I think is a wonderful concept. But I was wondering then, so do we expect the total construction costs or hard costs to be about $160,000?
260.
260.
We have commitments of up to 100 already.
And then what are the provisions of you said there was a licensing agreement, and I was wondering how many years is that for? Is there, what are the provisions of that?
The licensing agreement with Ledyard Bank is for 20 years. Basically, it removes the obligation for them to pay the taxes on it because it will become public use space, not unlike Kendall Riverfront Park. And they have committed to $75,000 in addition to the license agreement. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question completely.
Yeah, and then just liability.
So we will have this insured through Primex, like we insure all of our assets, whether it's Riverfront Park or the school street park. So we insure everything, and we'll make sure that in Parks and Rec, I didn't mention, but this is going to be teed up as part of our Parks and Rec program as a space program through Parks and Rec. And so if a nonprofit or another entity wanted to use this for a public gathering, they could reserve it as part of the Parks and Rec programming. Like you could reserve the Black Center rooms or even School Street Park.
Thank you.
I think it's awesome. Congratulations for the really creative work.
What's our timeline?
I have a very ambitious timeline. I've scheduled, had Hannah from Parks and Rec tee up the idea of a unveiling and groundbreaking on August 1st.
Okay. Sell those bricks.
This may be a phased project. The architectural features may be installed later on.
And I thought, thank you for adding all the additional materials and plants and other things. Struck me if we do bollards, my personal taste would be that they're not yellow unless they match for some reason. You know, like I was just in Boston. They have several parklets and none of them are flanked by giant orange things. I think it is, I think could be really beautiful and really interesting. And I'd hate to just throw up something that looks like a hazard sign in front of it.
Yep.
So I think we should be thoughtful on what the bollards are. I'd like to move away from, freeway barriers just as permanent fixtures or orange thing.
Understood.
Don't forget fake plastic ivy.
Yeah.
Even just as bad.
Yeah.
We will come up with a solution that is architecturally appropriate and fits the program.
When we had parking meters, it wasn't a problem.
All right.
We will be replacing the curb with a mountable curb so the food truck can access this, and that's part of the issue for us.
Got
is making sure it's safe.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Granite slabs.
Rates and fees.
Sure, I can.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks.
Okay.
So the next item is rates and fees, and I tee it up, but acknowledge that Ellen has done the heavy lift on this, and
Well, Rob pulls that up. I'll just, sort of do a general overview of the process. Each year we go through all the rates and fees, and basically it's a process of the departments evaluating their rates and fees. And then Rob and I met with the major departments who have the most fees, and then they submit their updates, and that's what you see in your packet. In general, I have highlighted almost all of the changes. There's one that I did miss, but I would like to point out that we do have two departments that really are still in process. The planning and zoning rates and fees, the department did a very thoughtful job, but the changes that they came back with were more than Rob and I felt we could be prepared to discuss tonight. So I think there's some more refinement that needs to go there. We do need to set the public hearing that will happen on June 12th. Part of that public hearing is that the final rates and fees, do need to be posted 7 days prior to that meeting. So the rates and fees for planning and zoning that are proposed will get to all of you and be available to the public well before that June 16th meeting. The other department that has rates and fees that are a bit in flux, and we see the ambulance division here. So we have modeled the increase in the rates and fees to support the budget that was approved. But there are two pieces of legislation moving through Concord right now. And the purpose, and I cannot speak with full knowledge of that legislation, but if I understand it correctly, the purpose of that legislation is to eliminate the surprise billing that can occur when individuals access healthcare and then the private insurers don't cover for whatever reason what the insurance holder expected. So Susan Prentice from Lebanon has proposed a minimum payment by private insurers that equals 325% of the Medicare allowed payment. So 325% of the Medicare allowed payment is significantly above where our rates and fees for ambulance runs are set. And the legislation, if I understand it correctly, would set those minimums for the private insurers and then cap the contribution of the patient at $100. So I don't have exact numbers, but of course we do have a large portion of our service that is covered by Medicare. And none of that would be impacted by this because although we set our rates and fees, Medicare pays their allowable amount and then we have an offset. And that's all built into the budget. But even based on a portion of our service being supported by private insurers, it could have a significant impact. So I haven't spent a lot of time discussing with Rob. We could take two approaches. If between now and basically 1 week, we have better information, if this bill does pass, then we could update the rates and fees for this approval on June 16th. If we don't have full information, we could go ahead and approve the rates and fees that support the budget that's been approved, and then have a public hearing to revise those rates and fees if that's appropriate at a future time. So those were kind of the two departments that are still in play.
Thank you.
So we can run through the rates and fees, or if you have any questions specifically, happy to answer them. Major change in planning will, if they come forward, will be supported by an analysis that shows the costs that were, the fees cover the cost of service rendered through the application process. And it's typically a baseline fee that we have. So a standalone building permit has a baseline fee. And we're analyzing whether or not that fully represents our fully burdened rate. You know, how much time does Beth take for the administrative assistant taking processing the application? How much staff time in your typical rough-in final inspection process, whether it's foundation, insulation, electrical, plumbing, and then final, does that fee actually cover all of the costs? Or are we passing that on to the taxpayer? So that analysis has been asked for today, and we hope to have that. If we believe that the fees warrant inclusion in this year's rates and fee schedule. We'll let you know and update the rates and fees prior to the public hearing deadline so that they're posted.
Is the idea that that would be covering fully loaded costs
Yes,
of benefits?
a fully burdened rate, yes.
And then I had a question just about the parking rates. This came up during the budget and like, when should we talk about it? We didn't talk about it then. And I'm looking forward to the parking study. I saw the RFP go out. I just think we should make some changes now. We've been putting this off and we've had a bit of inflation, you know, road costs, other things have gone up, and we've actually, you know, since the pandemic made parking cheaper. We shifted a couple lots to a cheaper rate by moving them to 10-hour lots. We shifted some parking to staff that used to be pay. We've shifted some spots to 15-minute meters to make them free. So we've actually like decreased the cost of parking. But what really jumps out to me is just this 10-hour meter. And how we talk a lot of like, how can we get people to use the garage? And for me, it's just the garage costs a lot more than the 10 hours. So we look at it over time. Now I tried to print it on one piece of paper, but it didn't print well. We look over time, like it's just the garage is a yellow one. That's like our most expensive one. Of course, if you get a ticket after 2 or 3 meters, it would go up to almost what the garage costs, right? At $15, but the 10-hour street parking costs more. I mean, costs less. So it seems to me that we should be raising that 10-hour meter rate. And then, I mean, it's a little bit interesting to me that like maybe we want to simplify the garage because like the marginal park, you know, rate is all over the place. It just makes it confusing. Like if we thought people would use it more if it were simpler, that's the marginal, whereas the other ones are kind of just, you know, you pay 75 cents an hour, you pay $1 an hour, you pay $1.50 an hour. But instead you pay, you know, the equivalent of $3 an hour versus then it goes back down to $1 an hour, up to $3 an hour. The numbers are on the back if you want to look at them. So I just thought we could make some quick, and then the events, like, you know, our garage gets really full on Dartmouth football and they're charging for parking like a block away. And people can't use our garage on that day because it really gets filled up when it's all free. When we have these big events that we know are drawing all these cars, right? So I just thought some quick fixes. I know there's going to be a lot more information that comes out of the study to see how our parking is behaving post-pandemic. But these are the ones that seem to have been like around for a while that we could do something now. That's my thoughts.
I appreciate the idea of trying to figure out how we can move the needle, especially with increasing the use of the parking garage. I think we committed to the study as a way to do this in a comprehensive way. And unless the board directs me otherwise, I think we should wait till the study is completed to fully brief the board on how we move the needle across the board. The challenge is the 10-hour parking is used by employees, and we need to make sure we can give them reciprocal. What I understood you to say is parking garage to serve that need, perhaps.
Perhaps, yeah. I think like there's street parking though. And I mean, right now our 2 to 3 hour lots are cheaper than our garage, right? And maybe it's because we want them to turn over fast or something. it's just that if we want people, I don't know, I guess maybe we don't want our parking, our street parking to be turning over or more expensive than the garage. I thought that is what I've heard repeatedly. And not all of our 10-hour parking is lots. We have 10-hour parking by meter all along School Street, and every day we watch, construction workers park there and go and work on the construction on West Wheelock, right? Because it's the cheapest parking in town, it's really convenient. And the same thing on Lebanon Street and on Crosby Street, which will be closed. But we have these metered spaces that are very convenient and very inexpensive. And then there's we wonder why we don't have any available parking when people are looking for it. And we know the biggest way to change that is through the price. We'll keep running out of ice cream if we give it away for cheap, right?
Just a quick question. Are we only allowed to change rates and fees once a year?
You can hold a hearing. You just required to hold a hearing on your rates and fees. So we can do it as many times as you would like.
Okay.
The challenge for me is a parking, like transportation in general, is like a water balloon. You squeeze it in one place, it pops out in another place. I use that analogy. The unintended consequences of a decision may be that they go to neighborhoods where we don't want to encourage necessarily on-street parking, or then get requests to create an ordinance to regulate the on-street parking. And we're seeing that today in neighborhoods south of the high school. So I'm not a parking professional. The whole effort to get the RFP out and to get this study done was to try to come up with a comprehensive approach. But we can certainly ask our parking department to give consideration to what it would take to move the needle on making the parking garage competitive with the 10-hour lots. And I say that with the caveat that parking garage does serve a function for event parking as it relates to downtown activities, and we see it quite regularly when Dartmouth is doing something in the daytime. The Hopkins Center will be open again in the near term. We know how that draws people in. So there's a balancing act to make sure we keep that garage functional for some of those activities also. So I think we can look at it, but I'm not the person who can answer that question tonight.
When will this study be completed? More or less? We don't know.
I think that's part of my concern is that we don't have anyone doing the study, right? I'd love to see this study. But I'd love, this is now several years, and I feel like we did change the parking without a public hearing and then fixed it, right? With the public hearing, but and that all made it less expensive to park, which makes it harder to have available parking where we need it, right?
I again will say that the approach that I've taken is to look to hire experts in the field to help us come up with a coordinated plan. The RFP is funded in the 2026 budget, has already gone out with the idea that we hit the ground running as soon as possible. I issued it on the 20th or the 21st. So I think we're in a good place from timing perspective. We can ask parking to analyze what we can do with the parking garage specifically, an allocation of 50 or 75 spaces. The reality is it will be under construction in the near term. We have $500,000 worth of repairs to make.
And they will take portions of that building offline.
Which I think is gonna make it harder to park,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? So,
Yes.
well, the way you typically manage that is by charging more. And maybe it doesn't have to be that, maybe we're very happy with heavily subsidizing the 10-hour, all 10-hour meters and lots, right? But there's this other question, what happened to that revenue? Because that, I mean, we can see, you know, we're collecting the 10-hour lots, which fill up first, at a much lower rate than the 2-3-hour lots that they used to be.
I would comment.
Like, there's like a couple things going on, and that's why we want to do a study. But just like, if we want the people to park at the garage, I'm not sure why this is the same general pattern that we've had for several years now.
I again will say that my approach is to rely on the professional expert. I do want to acknowledge that the 10-hour parking is designed to be staff parking. And the reality is we're trying to encourage those staff to park more remotely in those 10-hour lots and spaces so that they don't feed the meter in our 2 and 3 hour spaces to ensure that there is turnover. I think no matter what we do with the prices, those who can afford to pay will pay, because parking, that's what they will do. If they want to park close to town and there's a space available, they will pay that premium. The challenge isn't those who can afford to pay, it's the worker bees and that need to understand, you know, that there's real cost to parking to them. That's my take.
So thank you, Jenny, for putting this together. I didn't get a copy actually, but email it to me. So why don't we do that? This isn't here, but Rob, do you want to? We'll pick this up again at the next select board meeting, and maybe in talking to our parking staff, there may or may not be. Why don't you come back to us and see if there's any tweaks you want to think about? It sounds like the parking study implementation is probably a year out. So are there things we want to do maybe in the interim?
Can I just add my 2 cents? I completely agree with everything you said, Jenny. Like, I think there's rates in here that don't make a whole lot of sense. I also support Rob's push to use a professional, you know, an expert to help us come up with those rates. And I would be okay with waiting. I don't want to wait a year. I'm okay with waiting like a couple months. But also I think that we need to test more in terms of parking rates in order to see how it actually works and what happens, and be willing to change this stuff, not once every 4 years, but like once every couple months. Because if we see an issue, it's not something we're going to tackle during the next parking study. We need to be able to say, okay, this is an issue and we need to adjust to it. And lastly, I think there are very different patterns in town in the winter versus the summer. So May through October is very different than November through May. And I think we also should be adjusting to that as well.
I'd ask you a follow-up, just like how do you envision this testing happening?
I don't know, but I think Rob brings up a great point that it's like a balloon that, you know, you change something here and it has an effect somewhere else. And I think we need to figure out how to get that feedback and that data and then continue to iterate, improve the rates and, you know, which areas are used for what type of parking. And, the lengths that people can use different parking. Because I agree, I mean, I park in the garage every day, the bottom layer is closed right now. And then even considering that most of the bottom 2 layers are open, they're yeah, I don't think it ever gets more than 50% filled in the least spaces. And then the upper levels, again, my estimate is we're probably hitting 60-70% utilization. And that's about as much as we'll see. I think every once in a while it'll go above that. It is a far underutilized asset in this town. It's way too expensive, and it needs some work. It needs a good cleaning, and I think we can do it better.
Or perhaps if we want people to park there for 2 to 3 hours, and we don't want the touch the 10-hour lots, then the 2 to 3 hours needs to be more expensive.
Yeah, I agree. Street parking, especially during the peak season, keep raising the price until people stop parking there and park somewhere else. And then we know we've got the price right.
So if we're gonna do, like, I just think that we should be trying something now. Like, we haven't done it. We talk about this every year. And it's, we were waiting for a study last year. We were waiting for the study by the parking department with utilization rates. We were waiting for, prior to that, a study about what happened when we changed the 10-hour, the 2 3-hour lot to a 10-hour lot. To your point, I'm not sure like how we're collecting this data, but if we're just going to be going by vibes looking on the street, and we can just try something now. Like, I just think like it's a pretty clear to me why people don't park in the parking garage.
Yeah.
And it's just like it costs more than our other meters. So I just think we should consider adjusting that. Like, while, you know, we also changed like the parking lot by the Visual Arts Center to 10 hours. I don't think, we didn't ever get the implication of what that had on revenue, but we know that it costs a lot less to park there. Like, maybe we never got the utilization rate before.
Well, I mean,
that.
what changed there was no one was parking.
I worked there and I disagree, but I never saw, I know you probably parked there too. I mean, I worked there and I look at the lot and it was often being used. And maybe other times it wasn't. I don't have the data. I'm not confident that it just wasn't being used, because I saw it being used, and we could go back and look at my many pictures of parking lots that I often take and see if I caught that one. But
no, I mean, I think we need data in order to change.
I do know it's a big revenue drop. Even like, you need a lot more cars to park there to make up for the difference.
Yep.
So sounds like we should take this up in 2 weeks, Rob. Circle back. So, okay, all right, thank you. Anything else on rates and fees?
I just had one question about, we went from the police cruiser charging $25 an hour when a cruiser's there to no fee. And that's
Baked in.
It's baked into, okay. And then just in terms of the water meter, I guess it's sewer. Change went from, you know, a certain inch pipe rate to a flat rate. Well, maybe it's not flat, it's is it a use rate?
Like a connection fee more than.
So the structure of the fees
I didn't really
did
understand
not
that.
change. So.
Just the price tag.
Correct. And so that's where, for instance, if we're looking at water, we're seeing.
Oh, I see.
I
misread.
Yeah, but it is, I mean, I agree, it's confusing. So the water fees are going up, the usage fees are going up by 7%. And then in addition, we are following the
American Association of Water on the quarterly base charges. And so those, we have a 10-year plan to increase. I have to say from last year's rates, the great majority of our meters are 5/8 of an inch, and that we have achieved the top level. So that's not impacting almost all of the residential users. So,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, unless there's,
We had talked about adjusting the parklet fee last year at,
Right.
I think, this exact meeting, right? Whatever, our June meeting. Or is that just, are we holding, or what's the story, the thinking behind that, I guess?
Didn't happen. Or are you paying more this year?
No, it's $50.
So it's $250 per parking space. Plus the permit, the application fee. And the number hasn't changed since we created the parklet back in COVID. Happy to discuss. I don't know if I was present last year when you discussed this, and if I was.
Probably not.
I probably did. You slipped my mind.
Because it was June, right?
Yeah,
It was
I
like
think
this
it's-
meeting
it's-
and we had a big discussion, I guess.
Yeah, so
I just was
We kind of
curious what was-
agreed, but it just kind of sounds like it fell through the cracks.
so maybe we add that for next time. I think one of the topics there was just in terms of foregone revenue.
Yep.
It seemed like it was underpriced, right?
But we lost the window because the parklets are out there, but we should
But it's
change
goes-
it.
I
Yeah.
think the schedule is such that it kicks in for the
Stepwise,
fiscal year,
yeah.
yeah.
it would be tripped next application cycle.
Great. And that's what we kind of all agreed that it should go up to better reflect the true cost of parking loss. Or somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we all really like parklets, but they pay less than the guy who's selling rings right here. They do.
The ring man.
The ring man pays more,
Beloved.
But he's allowed to be there 9 months.
but he still pays more per month. So,
And the tables on the sidewalk too, is that new or has that always been there?
So this board adopted an amendment in 2024 that allows an application for sidewalk tables, provided that they meet certain ADA requirements, which is 40 inches clear pass through, and it requires an application process. So I think we have 4 that I counted as of this morning that have not been permitted yet.
so that feels like those are two things that parklet and sidewalk. There should be a fee.
There is a fee for sidewalk seating.
Yeah. There's a fee, but no one's paying it.
Yeah,
No one's applying for getting,
no one's paying for it.
understanding the restrictions on the ADA pass-through requirements.
Okay,
Opportunity
work
for
to be
someone.
done.
Yes, all right, thank you. Okay. And we move on to committee assignments and discussion of statutory boards and committees. This is a document that circulated at the last meeting. We postponed it. Okay, we can take it up now.
So thanks for doing that. I don't know who did it, but thank you for
Well,
doing that. I guess kind of my ask was because I truly didn't know.
some of the challenges here is I'll use the advisory board of assessors as a statutory board, but it's advisory. So I called out that it was a statutory board. It's not a board created by the select board as an advisory board.
But it acts in an advisory capacity.
Yes,
Yes, okay, got it.
But it's created at town meeting.
yes.
So as a liaison, do you get to vote?
So it's an interesting question. The bylaws, for example, in the Conservation Commission, call for 2 voting members of the select board. The statute for the planning board calls for an ex officio member of the select board and an alternate ex officio member or voting members. There are.
The conservation says 1 in here.
In the bylaws?
No, on the.
So that put 1?
Yeah.
I think it says up to 2.
Oh, okay.
So, what I tried to do is tease out where we had bylaws that express the standard. Example, the Howe Library, that's a liaison. The non-voting person.
So a liaison is a non-voting person.
Yes.
So on the advisory board of assessors, it's a non-voting person. In terms of the trustees of trust funds, non-voting person.
That's a good question.
And then how is a non-voting?
Right.
What about Prescott?
Trustees of the trust fund. Prescott is totally different.
Right. I was just wondering, I think we've included Prescott when we've gone over the list. The board, because, Athos has been serving on it, right? Or Carrie and Carrie. And how does that work?
So
That's an anomaly.
that's a corporation and,
Like the Howe Corporation, yeah.
but the town is 50% owner of the Prescott company and the college is 50% owner. So the corporate bylaws establish the membership. And the membership is 2 select board members and the town manager and three Dartmouth reps, I believe is the count. But that exists because it's a corporation, not a select board designated entity. And those bylaws need to be changed if.
What do you mean we didn't create the entity, is that what you mean? Or?
The entity is the ownership
It's independent.
corporation of the Prescott company lands. And we created it when we converted the waterworks to a municipal water system and took share ownership of the greater asset.
Yeah.
So Pete can give you the history because he moved it through the process, but it was a PUC process. There were all kinds of processes involved.
But basically, 2 of the elected officials serve on that corporation. And
Yes.
so they're voting.
And its town manager's also voting them.
So that should be added here as, just like, as you said, like the Howe. Yeah, as an independent type. If that's what, we have advisory and statutory. But the independent, and the select board role is their 2 members and the town manager.
But it's kind of its own category.
Yeah, special group.
Special category.
Consider yourself special, Carrie.
Just once a year we meet now.
And so, I mean, part of this ask was just so we all could better understand what our obligations are as we go forward. Because I go to these meetings and sometimes I'm like, do I vote? Do I not vote? I certainly always share my opinion, but and I think sometimes we're elected officials, so the statutory responsibility, you know, if we're voting members, we vote. Do we vote as representing the board, or do we vote representing our own personal agendas? I guess, I mean, I don't know. I would imagine we just vote however we feel like. Generally, that's how I do it, but I'm not sure if my job is as a board representative, you know, do I take it back to the board? I can't imagine us doing that for planning board or for.
I don't think we have a mechanism to do that. Like, we don't meet enough to do that. I think that's why the term liaison was also being used. Because it's not, or ex officio, right? It's not a representative, it's just a member who is also, who is from that board.
No, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just have never had a discussion at this
Yeah.
board to really understand what we kind of all agree to, or know what our jobs are on various boards. And I was pretty clear at the Howell Library. I'm like, hey, I'm here. Don't really have capacity to do much, but I'm happy to liaison between the select board and.
Yeah, it can be awkward. I mean, like the finance committee, I do vote for the finance committee, and I think that's the tradition, although I need to check the bylaws because I'm not quite sure if that's baked into the bylaws. I guess it is.
But they haven't been adopted yet.
The finance committee bylaws have not been adopted.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the CIPC.
CIPC,
Finance
yes.
committee had,
Yes, yeah.
they are, yes.
Who knew we had a Hanover Community Nursing Advisory Committee?
So
I didn't know that.
one of the things I think would be helpful, and I think I have a little grid, and I'll circulate it. I said I was going to do this previously in terms of what these folks are interested in terms of committee representation, advisory, et cetera. But I'll put this together into a grid and circulate it, show the existing assignments, and then what people might want to do going forward. And we'll try and balance out the load. So.
And then does the board, what?
Not looking at you because you're light.
It's like, we're gonna balance out the load.
So as a board, like when we're not like voting, I guess, are there any policies that exist in terms of what our responsibilities are as select boards on these boards? Like, is there a select board policy? I know that this came up when, in terms of serving as chairs on these various boards. Hanover Bike Walk, I've done Conservation Commission, served as vice chair at one point. Do we, as our select board role, do we have a policy that says we should or shouldn't do that? Is it untoward or unethical to be a chair as a board, as a select board member? Given our incredible power as we sit here on the board. So.
And we can go to our ethics policy. So far, I haven't profited from Bike Walk, but I have spent some time and money on it.
You haven't profited.
Well, not in the traditional sense. It brings me great joy. So.
You're special that way.
Yeah.
So.
I think it brings up a good point. Like, does leading one of these boards that has a specific mission present a conflict to the select board, which has a larger goal of representing all constituents? That's a good question.
Well, and I certainly, in my professional life, I definitely have to jump off, the wing, in some situations, whether it's on the select board, like today when I jumped because of the Dartmouth proposal, or, you know, Board of Assessors, or, you know, some of those things you have to recuse yourself. I mean, if we had a Economic Development Council that you served on, you know, it might be an awkward situation given that you own this, right, for example. But since we don't have a town committee, but I mean, that's part of small town stuff, is we all have our specialty and bring it to the table. So I'm talking myself out of policy. So anyway, I just thank you for managing it and kind of understanding our jobs here. Even though I've been on the board longer than any of you guys.
So the select board, so it's an interesting conversation that I'm hearing. So the select board is governed by statutes in the town charter. And there are boards that have bylaws. There are not many. Hanover does not, the select board. Rules of procedure, what have you. So, you know, I fall back to the Knowing Your Territories book, that if you don't have a copy of it, I'll make sure you all have access to it digitally. It comes out every year, it's updated, and it sort of sets the framework for how boards should operate. And I can also look at guidance from elsewhere on a question that's been posed, if I understand it correctly, which is, should a elected select board member who is either, I'm going to use the term liaison to an advisory committee, is that a fair term?
Yeah, or
serve in as a chair or vice chair role?
go ahead.
I'm, as part of my recent retirement, I'm cleaning up my files, because it brought more stuff home. But Jared already knows this. But I was going through my own school board stuff and came across a whole bunch of roles and responsibilities. So I was thinking that we might use it as part of a training, a board training thing. Some of the material, and there's actually a person who put them together. So anyway, down not too distant future, we get to do a retreat and maybe do a training. So it's somewhat related.
Yeah. There's, I mean, I think one thing that was pretty incredible is how many committees and boards that we all serve on in addition to the select board. And, you know, I think it's really important that we do, but it is a huge amount of time. Do it. Right. Thank you.
Okay, I will circulate the interest sheet and think about the board retreat, et cetera. That's a little ways down the road, but okay. Thank you. Anybody? Thanks, Rob. Should we segue into town manager monthly report?
I'd like to move that to the end and we'll move you to
Action.
action items, specifically the bond bank agreement.
Oh, yeah, I'm
and the
sorry.
appointment of
Sorry.
people.
Poor Ellen.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm here for the duration.
Okay.
Okay. So, what we have tonight is, basically, we need to, certify the vote of the select board, to allow the town, to enter into the loan agreement, where the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank will then issue bonds in the amount for the town of Hanover to benefit in of $1,060,000, $615. And that is for the purchase of the fire engine. This was approved at town meeting in May of 2023. The total bond approval was for $1.2 million, and the cost of the fire engine came in slightly lower than that. And if you remember,
we chose to move ahead with this earlier than we might have otherwise, but because of the escalating costs of the apparatus, this made a lot of sense. So basically what the bond bank requires is that we have a certified vote of the select board going through the resolution. And once that vote takes place, then Tracy will certify the vote. And then in addition, the loan agreement would be signed and executed by you, Carrie, as the chair, by Tracy, and then by our town treasurer. Now, it is a little bit interesting because these documents are written with a not to exceed interest rate because we don't know what the interest rate is going to be. That will occur once the bond sale happens. And I know in the memo that I sent out to all of you, as we went through the budget process, we needed a proxy for this rate. So I did use the January 2025 rate of 3.84%. As you can see in the loan documents, the not to exceed is 5.25%. So I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know where we're going to land. I can say that the 20-year treasuries, we're at 4.97 today. But over the 20 years, the additional interest or payments, it's not insignificant. It's just under $150,000. That translates over the 20 years. It's about $7,500 a year. So I'm not dismissing the fact that in total it's material. From a budget standpoint, this doesn't cause us trouble in 26 and or ongoing. I did, some math, again, if we landed at 4.5%, then the increase over what we signaled during the budget process would be just under $80,000 difference. It still does compare favorably to the rate that the banks, when I investigated this initially, were providing us. And at that time, between then and now, those rates could very possibly be higher. So I do think that, this is a good approach to basically purchase of the fire engine, which just happens to have a picture in the town manager report. So you can see where those dollars are going to, our state-of-the-art engine. So.
And the $7,500 accounts for both the higher interest rate, but also the lower truck costs.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Well, actually, when I did the budget, when I did the amortizations at budget time, I knew the cost of the trust. So
you need a motion to approve the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank loan agreement for the new fire truck.
yes.
That the bond was authorized at the 2023 town meeting.
Sounds like a motion. Was that a motion?
I move.
Yes,
Approve.
okay, all right, is there a second on that?
I second.
All right. Discussion.
I just want to say, I read about fire trucks and the cost going up, and it is crazy. Just want to say it's crazy. And there's been this mass consolidation, which is driving it. A fire truck
engine making people.
It started with the parts, but yes.
Wow. So we're getting.
It's a vertical and horizontal consolidation where one player took over 30% of the market within a couple of years and is growing. Is still is now buying up other places. So it's not looking great until we have some trust busting. Yeah, it's really crazy. How fast could this turn over? If we're worried about the interest rates, how long does this process take? I like, no, I'm not familiar.
The bond sale is July 16th.
16.
Okay, so it's a specific date that
Part
happens.
of a $140 million bond sale.
Okay.
Wow.
That's what I didn't.
So we're just a piece of it.
Okay, yeah, I didn't understand like how that actually happened, the actual day. Okay.
And the 140 may be on the low side. But
Uh-huh.
the New Hampshire Bond Bank packages these up and puts them out for sale
Okay,
on a periodic basis.
and so whatever the rate is at that day, basically.
You get that. That's correct. That's correct. And by entering into this agreement, we are agreeing to accept that rate, but they do provide the not to exceed.
Yeah.
So our loan agreement would not exceed the 5.25.
Okay. Those are all my questions and nice little
Sorry.
fire truck knowledge.
I'm psyched that you have that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And now you need a second piece from us?
Yes.
Yes.
There's a second motion in your packet if you would.
Right, and so the second motion is, this is, in going through this process, I work very closely with our bond counsel, who is very, very knowledgeable. And when we put together the application for the bond bank, I had to, when the question of whether we had a post-issuance tax compliant policy and procedures, I had to say no. I believe that one of the reasons why we haven't had this in the past is because Hanover has not done a lot of bonding. So, and in addition, between the last time we bonded and now, the IRS has become, taken on a higher level of enforcement, and in particular with the, whatever that form is, 8038. It's a annual reporting that we're required to do. So at our bond counsel's recommendation, she did put together this policy. She wrote it. She did provide her memo as to why we should have this in place. And what's interesting is for this particular bond issue, it is unlikely to come into play because we have already purchased the truck. So when we get the bond proceeds, it will be paying the town back. Much of this policy has to do with arbitrage, where we might take, maybe we have a long-term project, a $20 million project, and we get the bond proceeds and then work through the project. But there are restrictions as to what can happen with those proceeds. And what you can't do is borrow at a low rate and invest it at a higher rate. And in doing that, the holders of the bonds lose the tax benefit. They become taxable. So Rennell's, our bond counsel's view was, first of all, we should have this in place so we can say yes to that question. We can say yes to it on the IRS form. And then as we move forward, you know, some of the projects we're talking about, whether or not they happen, would be pretty significant bonding events, so that we really want to have our ducks in a row in it. And it is kind of part of our larger process of updating and having current policies and procedures.
Okay. Thank you. It sounds like you're going to get an addition to your resume, because you're now going to be the director of post-issuance tax compliance policies and procedures.
Yes.
Which is
Congratulations.
Awesome. Yes.
We haven't made the vote yet, but
Okay.
shall we move
Yes.
to approve the post-issuance tax compliance policies and procedures resolution attached, that the board names the director of finance as the coordinator, Ellen, under the post-issuance tax compliance policies, and that the director of finance has accepted such nomination. And finally, that this resolution shall take effect from and after its adoption.
That's okay. Second, all right. Further discussion. Thank you for doing this, Ellen. Thank you for getting our policies up to date. You're right, this will be very important down the road. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Amy, you've been here all this
We should have put you up first. Such an interesting fashion,
Right? Come on up to the table. Draw this time.
I know, gosh, we should have taken up this up first.
Yeah, we
I was
should.
like, I read your letter and your resume. I'm like, oh my gosh, sign her quick. Get her on the Conservation Commission. After you heard about, you know, the mapping that we need done and all of your good work that
Promise
you've
me I
done.
wouldn't have to do the GIS work. I did it for 40 years and I'm done with that.
I'm done with that. Good on you.
Well, thank you. We were all very, I think, impressed with your letter and your qualifications, but turn it over to Rob. So
Certainly, there are several vacancies on the Conservation Commission. The chair of the Conservation Commission has put Amy's name forward, and she's more than qualified. And I would encourage the board to appoint her to the Conservation Commission as a member.
any questions, statements?
No, I've never lived in a town that has a conservation commission, so I've been intrigued by what it was like. I started going to the meetings and it's just, yeah, it's a cool thing.
Thank you for doing it. Yeah, and for sitting through this meeting.
I move to appoint Amy Hawk to the Conservation Commission. Do we have a second?
I'll go.
Second.
Thank you.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, we have one other consent agenda item. Light pole banner and Main Street pennant requests
Rowdy.
for the Proudy.
Yeah.
To approve the light pole attendance requests as presented.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Good. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye, thank you.
When is it? July 8th and 9th.
So we've jumbled it significantly.
Yeah, we kind of skipped
Minutes.
the town manager.
Town manager report and minutes. Yes.
Yeah.
Should we?
But I do want to give us,
Tracy, yeah, what do you need?
Yes.
Do you need our signatures?
documents. You have a signature requirement for tonight?
It was in, Kate had it done.
Oh, it's there, so you have it in the signature folder.
Okay.
Should already be in there.
Okay.
Okay, we'll sign that while we do.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to touch on the town manager report. It's fairly lengthy. And I would suggest, given the hour, that I just acknowledge that it's in the package. It's quite robust, this meeting, and two departments gave me their updates late, so they weren't included, one with Public Works and one was planning. But the goal of this is to sort of help answer the question of what do we get for our tax dollars? You know, this is an indication of the work that's going on behind the scenes. I do want to acknowledge that I had the opportunity to get away for some training and it was very helpful. I learned some things about, in particular, electioneering that I didn't realize applied to the town manager's position. Technically, I'm exempt from electioneering.
So meaning you can.
You can wear whatever you want. Wow.
I wouldn't do it
Because we have a town clerk and.
because we have the town manager form of government exempts
Yes.
the town manager from electioneering. I can speak at a public session.
And support or against anyone.
It would be a bad thing to do.
What about us as select board members?
As
What's the rules?
individuals, so the rule, the short answer is, if you're using town equipment or speaking at a town meeting in your capacity as a select board member representing the body, you would be electioneering. However, you have the right at any time to say, taking out my select board hat and speaking as a voter, I intend to vote this way.
Yeah.
And that you don't give up your rights to speak on behalf of any item. Just don't print anything with town money or distribute it unless it's just informing the public as to the actions of the board. It's on the board.
So as a town department, supporting a yay or a nay on a project, would that be considered electioneering?
No.
Okay, so like the rec board in support of the school board's vote for 7th and 8th grade at the school budget. That's not considered electionary.
No.
Okay.
And you can like disseminate that information.
It's different in other states.
Yeah.
The other interesting piece that I learned about was how to deal with the disposal of tax due properties and our obligations subsequent to a major legislative change in 2023. The short answer is we need to get back on the tax bills. We need to sell it as soon as possible. And the previous owner has a right to any profits made on the sale above and beyond what was owed the town, including interest accumulated over the period of time we've owned it. Unless the town deems the property appropriate to keep for other purposes such as conservation units. So going forward, we have a step.
Do we have many?
Do we often, we seldom have tax deeded properties. Have there been some in the past? Yes. In the recent past, no. We were about to take a piece in 2022, Grant Road?
No. It was up on.
Not Gates Road.
Gates.
Yeah,
Road,
Gates.
5 Gates.
Right.
And then they bought it back.
So the quick sale helps get rid of that issue, basically.
Well, the quick sale does what we're obligated to do, which is to put it back on the tax roll to make everybody else whole.
Yeah.
The balance of the taxpayer covering that loss.
Okay. Anything else from your report?
I would encourage everyone to read through it.
It's extensive.
Yes.
Lots of things have been going on.
And kudos to all the departments for submitting their reports and the heavy lift that they've done over the last month.
Thank you. Approval of minutes, approval of the May 19th. Motion to that effect.
I wasn't here, can't do that.
So moved. All right.
Just review.
All right, I will second. Any comments with respect to the minutes?
The planning and DPW, Rob, you said those were added later or?
They weren't added.
They weren't added.
I'll put them in the next.
Oh, okay. All right.
They
I
came
was
in
just,
after the package was distributed.
okay. And they weren't like, I was just checking to see whether I was missing anything.
No,
Okay, thank you.
I'll make sure going forward that they're responding in a timely fashion.
Okay. We had a second. Just flipping. I thought I was taking them in. What page are they on?
We are on
69, 70. 68, 69.
Yeah, they're freaking already, right? I'm good with the minutes.
All right. All those in favor? That's 3. Abstention.
Me.
Joanna? Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Ellen. I think we are through the agenda. We're moving into non-public. So where we are.
Select board reports, or that's not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, select board reports. Yes. Okay, all right.
Sustainability Committee met on the 21st, had a really interesting presentation from engineering group through Applied Projects about geothermal microdistricts for geothermal in the town. Looking at, they had a bunch of case studies. There are some homes that are geothermal. It is not an inexpensive endeavor. It was like $430,000 per household. So it was
With some payback.
of 48 years. I mean, the
Yeah.
payback was.
It's not as it's not as quick as payback as a heat pump, let's put it that way.
Let's say that a heat pump is much faster payback. They did look at, micro district where you would have, how Dartmouth is doing, it's extensive. I mean, it's their own micro district really, but the neighborhood districts, they looked at Kingsford Road and School Street, again. Really great exercise and really interesting, but really expensive.
It was like, the key takeaway was if there's flat land with connected homes, like a development or what's the Rennie Field property ever talked about, right? That's a place that would make sense, especially if it hasn't been developed yet, because it'd be easier to design the boreholes. But basically, if there's flat land, then that makes it easier to drill. You save some money.
Yeah, but it was not. It's a technology that's going to take a little while to
be more cost effective
for private
at a smaller scale.
Right. The other interesting thing that happened is that Dartmouth is with Antioch hosting a conference September 18th and 19th, local solutions to climate resiliency, bouncing forward to create resilient communities, and Hanover Sustainability Committee is going to be very involved in the process, and we'll be doing tours and showing folks around. So that's pretty exciting actually. So it's going to be at Dartmouth. And then how corporation met, I think that same week, spent a bunch of time talking about the RFP that's out on the street to improve space planning and to address some of the challenges the library has. And also it was just after their spring soiree, which was a very successful event. And I think that we all have that to look forward to next year should you want to go to the soiree, because it was really low key, great food, just a really, they had 4 speakers, and one of them was the Ray School librarian, and it was awesome to have her talk about the connections and the importance of schools and partnerships with our local libraries, including NM, but also the how programming that occurs. And the numbers are just blow your mind in terms of, it's really our community center in terms of the value that Hal brings. So that was really, it was fun. And I unfortunately had to miss the Board of Assessors meeting.
But you made the soiree.
I did make the soiree.
Okay.
And it was that crazy torrential Saturday night. I pick my priorities on my committees, soiree or with the soiree, you actually get no money for it. You actually had to pay money to go to that. Sure. It wasn't like a corporate slushy thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the one more sustainability thing. The sustainability committee has also been working with the NH 177 class, which is decision-making under uncertainty. And there are 3 student projects that embrace their question, which is how to basically work towards our 2050 Ready for 100 goals in some form, focused mostly on energy. And they are presenting January 4th at 4:45. Sorry, June. Typo there. June, very soon, this month. In Cummings at 4:45 is when they're the last 3 presentations. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, the students will be presenting, answering sustainable Hanover questions. Planning board's meeting tomorrow here at 7 p.m. There's will be a presentation about the Davidson block, the Davidson building, and a proposal to add 40 apartments and redo the back half of that building. And
which is Dirt Cowboy building.
Which, yeah, so not but not the front part, not with, and the glass company, sorry. Simon and Pierce and Dirt Cowboys, the front, that will stay for now. And the back will be, the proposal is for the back.
Yeah, it's the area that contains,
Tuck.
tuck.
And the park.
And the
shop.
Yeah.
Ernie and Wall Ernie's.
Yeah, so that presentation is tomorrow here by the developers.
Does that include the airspace building or whatever?
No.
That's somebody else's.
I believe that sold to, if I remember correctly, Andrew Pierce bought it.
Okay.
So the Wood Turner.
And then Hanover Bike Walk is next Monday here at 4 p.m.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right. Anything else, Ellen, Rob?
I see.
You do have a need for non-public?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you, officer. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Tracy. We gotta go.
Thank you.
While you, Nick's coming out.
Nick's gotta come out.
Tracy.
Oh, do you need this signature page?
See you in the restroom. I'll get it.
I don't, yeah,